about the last meeting, and all he texted back to me was, make sure Michael Parker gets a line item detail from the Board of Ed.
You are live.
Good
All
luck.
right, here we go.
Still don't have it.
It came in an email, I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah, it came in an
Yeah.
email.
you didn't get
You
it?
mean this?
Yeah, that's what everybody's got.
Oh, yeah, but this is, I mean, this is 5 pages.
I will.
Oh, no, there's like 40 pages in the
No,
back,
no,
isn't there?
I'm talking about the line, quote unquote, line item veto, one line
Oh,
item
line
budget.
item.
Isn't that it there?
That's it.
Yeah, how many pages?
Oh, I don't know. I don't operate at that level.
Did we all get that?
Yeah, I
think
emailed
so.
it to everybody.
we got
Oh,
that.
you think I'm
Couple
gonna
weeks,
print
yeah.
that down?
But for example, all
No.
the teachers'
They mailed
salaries
me
are
a copy of
compiled.
it.
There's no breakdown by
Right.
school or
Well, if you want that, then you're gonna have
You're
to
up
ask
in
for
line.
it.
No, I will.
I would just ask for that.
Yeah,
And I wouldn't mind if
We,
somebody else
on?
printed it for me instead of me.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you. I just looked at it, I said, I can't print this.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so the
Okay,
Vice Chairman.
I'm gonna call the meeting to order. It's 7:02. All right, members present are Bill Salka, Billy Meyer, Joe Tolosano, Mike Parker, myself, and Mike Marinazzo, Brian Lissinger, and Selectman Dodd Noor. Next on the agenda is the Board of Education update.
Right, and I received a memo saying that they won't be here tonight. They are presenting their budget to the Board of Ed tonight. So with that said, I came up with an email, and
I was-
maybe some of you received it, maybe some of you ended up with it in your spam folder or whatever, but the email shows the number of the dates that the superintendent cannot make. There's quite a few dates that he cannot make, he says, because of school events and or Board of Ed meetings.
Okay.
So I've also shown that you have 2 regular meetings on the 24th and the 23rd, and we're just going to have to come up with a Board of Ed special meeting.
Okay.
And I would think that it would be a single topic, would be him at that special meeting, so that all the questions that you're going to have on his budget. So we don't have to decide tonight, but our thought is on March 9th is his public hearing.
Oh, it's his.
And so I'm looking, and Brian and I were talking about March 10th being the night. Is that a Wednesday night?
It is
Tuesday
a
night.
Tuesday.
It is a Tuesday night?
look at you. Huh?
Yeah, I got my
Yeah,
fancy
you're the
phone.
man. So it would be a Tuesday night special meeting. Primary purpose, I mean, we could do other business, obviously, but the primary purpose of that would be questioning and going through the Board of Ed budget with the superintendent.
Well, that's, not that it matters, but that's fine with me. I
Okay.
can make that.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll plan on putting that on the calendar. That's it for the Board of Ed, so.
Okay, so we should put that on now, you think?
do.
or
You can put it on now. I'll send out a notice on it.
Be 7 o'clock?
Yes,
And will it be here?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Wasn't there one time when you guys had a meeting after the public hearing and it was in that library? I remember that. We were sitting in those little seats in there.
Seeing that I don't remember that, it has to be quite a while ago.
Okay.
More than 6 years ago. I don't remember that either.
Okay.
Not saying my memory's better, but I don't remember sitting in any little chairs.
He
Okay.
came to my rescue. At least he validated my thoughts. So, Selectmen's update.
Bud, would you like to come and present to us?
Yes, we've completed our initial budget reviews with all town departments, and we will finalize the budget after another thorough review and scrubbing before our final submission to the Board of Finance on February the 24th.
Okay.
Mike and Brian will review the preliminary numbers after my comments. We've had a number of meetings with the Department of Transportation to discuss options for the Route 190 and 83 intersection. And we'll be scheduling an April 8th public meeting to review the three options and to solicit citizens' input. Once completed, the Department of Transportation will proceed to design review. It will go into the queue after other towns and municipalities submit their request for their projects. The initial cost, if approved, for this redesign of the intersection is between $5.4 and $5.7 million. But given the state's current fiscal situation, I don't anticipate any quick review of this, so it's going to be a while before we get to that point. Speaking of the intersection, the Department of Transportation is still making adjustments, the rephasing of the signals, and if they're approved, but still need adjustments to be made. We're currently in the 5th draft of the zoning regulation rewrites, and hopefully the end will be in sight. If there's any comments that I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Where do we sit with legal fees and the projection for the year? I mean, I know we've had.
Well, in the budget, we have $40,000.
Spent about half so far.
Okay, so we're right on track.
We're actually trending a hair low, but yeah, we're
Okay.
with things coming down the pipeline. Yeah, we're right on target.
Yeah, two additional things on that DOT intersection. Number one, it's encouraging that it looks like they're going to get a transportation bill, so there will be some DOT funding. And number two, that project is $0 to the town. It's 80-20 federal, 80 federal, 20 state.
The center of town.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's that intersection.
The feds on that road?
Yeah. Well, they applied to the feds, and I guess
They got a grant.
federal highway money. Yeah.
Okay.
Took us 20 years.
2003. 2003 was the initial study done.
Yeah, but there was, CROG came first in 2000.
Yeah.
And there was a Tom somebody on that, and he went back to try to fix that intersection and straighten it out. And we've been waiting ever since. We got delayed a couple of times, but I think this is the best and the fastest I've ever seen summaries.
Yeah,
Well,
I
it's
found
all-
they asked us for a vision statement, which we gave to them in terms of the impact as it relates to economic development and safety. So at least we got their attention. It remains to be seen whether they'll make the funds.
Very good, Mike. Thank you.
Okay.
All
That's
right.
it.
Questions?
We all
No?
through with
Is
that?
that it?
How about you, Mike?
So CFO and budget, we're just going to just combine them together and just give you an overview of what's actually happening right now. I think Bud alluded to the fact that he's had a number of meetings, a couple of meetings with some of his larger departments, and the ones that we've been at, initial budgets have been trimmed back, so they are scrubbing their budgets, but nothing is final here. There's a lot of moving parts. We have the Board of Ed, which is a moving part. We have the governor's proposed revenue budget, which can possibly be amended and changed by the legislature, as we know. That's happened to us in the past. So, but as of today and as of this moment in time, let's go from the 100,000 foot view, so everybody can put things in context, and then you can worry about the line item detail later. So that's the sheet that we have in your package here. In terms of our revenue picture, our property taxes are based on our filed grand list. We're estimating proposed property taxes of $24 million for revenue, 028,034. That's a 0.84% increase. That takes into consideration any bad fee write-off. So it's 90% is the number we're using of the projected.
Collector?
Remember, we used to go with the revenue. We get the revenue, and then we go. Is it 90
Oh,
or
99.
99. 99. I'm sorry.
99%.
The second item there, intergovernmental, is state aid. While there is a slight decrease in ECS, that's the only account where anything is going down in the governor's proposal, we're showing an increase in state aid because we budgeted it at a lower rate last year. So actually, in terms of our budget, it's going to be a 1.32% increase over last year's state aid.
And that low number budget is due to the numbers that had come out preliminarily, and then they set their state budget after we had already done ours. So we got,
And so
we
again,
went
let
with
the
best guess at the
legislature
time, and
change
then
what
they
the budget.
changed it
Right.
when they approved the state budget. So
Licenses and permits we have, we're looking for a $50,000 increase there, and based on the growth we've seen, so that's around a 14% increase. Our interest, which has been growing quite rapidly over the last couple of years, is leveling out now. It's actually coming down. So we're going to hold that. We're holding that estimate as even for the new proposed budget with no growth. Miscellaneous. And what do we have in miscellaneous?
miscellaneous is just other revenue. It's
Fees.
no, it's not even fees. Fees are in license.
We
It's,
have,
it's really just
traffic,
kind of a. It's when the minibus gets donations and stuff like that. So there's a lot of. I mean, when you say miscellaneous, it's really just the things that don't apply to anything else. It's not a fee. It's not a permit. It's. Let's see if I've got.
So we're
do I have
projecting
it?
some growth there. Is it police services in the
I was gonna say,
miscellaneous?
No, well, I mean,
That would
they
be
make
general government
donations.
revenue
Is
anyway.
police services in miscellaneous?
Police services
So-
is the big one, and
so
bulky
we-
waste is the big one.
So our police we build
And the
them
cell
out for
phone
traffic.
tower.
We build them out for different projects, so they tell us that they're gonna have more projects next year because of Eversource, so we.
Blue Rock is currently doing a ton of work there,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you've noticed them, all the high-rise lines. They're putting in these pads around the bases of the high-rise lines. So while they're doing that, they're hiring us to do traffic control, and then they have to come back and remove them as well. So there'll be that traffic control. And
Are your police also doing the water mains at the and hydrants?
they have been, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Blue Rock got just last pay period alone when we did the invoicing. Their invoice was $21,000. So you get a few of those, they add up quickly.
And then the last revenue item there is transfers in from other funds, and the big bump there is that we're looking to have more money transferred in from the ambulance fund, because now that we're doing the ALS calls, there's more money per transport, and there's been more ALS calls. So we're actually looking at with a $500,000 contribution by the ambulance fund, which is going to be 50% of the fire department's budget. So they're actually funding 50% of their operating budget through their revenues that they're bringing in on fees, transport fees.
Very good.
So total that up, and we have a revenue picture. Again, these are all estimates, they're moving parts, and I'm sure some of them it's going to change, but we have, at this point in time, have a revenue estimate of a 1.74% increase, or about $578,000. I'll keep this in the back of your mind. A mill rate is worth $867,941.
Say again, please.
867.
7,941 would be a mill. So that's something you'll probably want to refer to as you start looking at cutting things or trying to figure things out. So now we'll move into the expenditure area. As we stand right now, the town is showing a 4.88% increase over last year's budget. Out of the gates, they were well over 5%. They've come down. They've lowered it down to this point right now. But like I say, they're still back and forth, and they're still not going to be finalized. They should be ready. We're shooting for them to present to you at your next regular meeting, which is 2 weeks from tonight. So if there's agreement between the selectmen, and if they vote in favor of their budget, and if I don't know if they have further cuts on the table, they may have that on the table, but they should be presenting a final budget to you. That's what we're shooting for. They may not agree with each other, so that may not happen. I don't know for sure. So, but So they're showing a 4.88 right now. Now, last year, I believe they went up, I don't know, well, I have it here, hold on a second. Last year, they went up 5.97%. That was our adopted budget. So they're actually coming in at a percentage point lower than they did last year. Everything is going up. From what the meetings I've sat in on, it's like everything is going up. Insurance rates are going up. Water from the water company is going up. They're going for a rate increase. Electricity is going up. I mean, so, it's almost across the board. The cost of living is going up. So, Board of Ed, the Board of Ed has remained 3.81. I believe that's what he is proposing tonight. Of course, this committee is tasked with further scrutiny on that, and it can also make suggestions for changes to that. Like I say, we've planned that for March 10th. So right now, our debt service is remaining flat. Our capital projects right now, based on CIP, is remaining flat. When CIP finally finalizes what we are going to do, that number could change. I don't think it's going to go up. It can go down. So, but right now we're budgeting it at flat. So on the expenditure side, we're showing a 3.85% increase, and that would be considered your increase of 3.85. Now, last year it was 4.47. We went to the taxpayers with that. So how do we fund that? There was a gap, obviously. If you look on the second column under adopted budget, second column from the left, you'll see there's a gap, and that gap was a fund balance that we used to plug that gap, and there was no tax increase. So that 561,381 came out of our reserves to plug the gap between revenue and expenses. This year, you look at the column next to it, right now as we sit here, that gap is 1.280 million. And there's only three ways you can plug that gap, right? It's either increase taxes, cut expenses, or
Balance. What's the current unrestricted fund balance?
right, or use your
A little
fund
over
balance.
1.4.
Say again?
A little over 1.4
1.4
is what's available.
million?
Yep.
Unrestricted fund balance.
The unrestricted is a little
Available.
over 7 million, but what's available to spend
What
if you keep
of-
the 2 months on hand?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So
Right.
the overall is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the overall is a little over 7. The 2 months is like 5.55, so
Right.
you got 1.45 roughly you can
1.4.
spend.
Now,
To keep everything in line with.
Right.
right, so one other piece of information you should know is that based on our review of our existing budget right now, this year's fiscal year, we're projecting, conservatively projecting a $250,000 return to fund balance, as we think is going to happen.
Is that for the town or for both?
That's for
That's
the
combined. I have to assume that the Board of Ed is going to spend all the pennies of their budget.
Right,
They
so
usually-
anything the Board of Ed does not spend would be bonus on top of that, which we could change that number upward.
I have
So-
a question.
Go ahead.
Last year, at budget time, when we were talking about the Board of Ed budget, just as it got down to the nitty-gritty, and somebody, I don't remember exactly who it was, it might even been me, might have been Joe, asked Brian what kinds of modifications he could make to his budget to help us, bring things together. And I recall distinctly that he said there weren't any things. At which point, you, with some knowledge of what was going on in the real world, said, well, what about the $30,000 in the oil budget? Which was then cranked into the result. I mean, God knows what we would do if we didn't have that kind of
I
information.
think we cut them overall 200,000.
But
think-
my question is,
We did.
are you in a position to be able to advise us too, as to what you think in both budgets might be worked on?
Maybe yes and maybe no. I think I have a partial view behind that curtain, but I don't have it's a Board of Ed curtain. I don't have a full view exactly of how they budget and what things come up with. Like, for example, I've already looked at it and I've made a couple of suggestions to them. If they take those suggestions, then that budget should change. If they don't, then I think I'm not going to have. I think I will advise you of what those were and what those reductions should translate into.
I think you're in a tough position.
I am.
But the members of the Board of Finance don't have any inside information. We don't have a player.
Right.
Like, remember when we used to have an elected treasurer? We had somebody who was available to the Board of Finance without creating that conflict.
I guess the best example I can use is when we ran into that budget emergency with Malloy's administration, and he was taking over the entire process, and he wasn't releasing any money, and we were kind of stuck between the rock and the hard place. And I enlisted the Board of Ed, and I said, you have to cut your budget X. And I think I told him it was like $1 million or 1.1 million. And I said, I'm not an educator, but you need to find it in your budget. And that maybe should be the tack that the Board of Finance takes, is that in order to make the puzzle pieces fit, maybe you need to step up and cut whatever the percentage is, X of your budget.
Yeah, this is where I was last year when you were looking at line items.
Yeah.
I can't tell the superintendent what's statutorily required and not. I can't
Right.
tell you what
Well, none of
regulations
us
are.
can. Yeah.
But well, a lot of it is, there's a lot of regulations that are unfunded. But we can say we feel the town has an increase of only $250,000 within its, we don't think anything beyond that's going to get passed. So I think that's where and it's an uneducated
Yeah, I think
analysis, quite
because
frankly.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think the algorithms that were used in the past to compute your per pupil expense and this and that, it's a different world. The student today is not the student of yesterday. They have all kinds of issues that they have.
Mental health issues.
Yeah, issues of kids being bussed in. They have issues of behavior problems in classes, and you're one teacher versus X students. In some classes, it's actually got to be a couple teachers. Now, you had said last year, I would like to see those math scores go up in town, and he would too, because if you read his budget, he's hired a whole bunch of math specialists.
Yeah.
So you don't want to tie his hands in terms of what he feels is needed to increase the effectiveness
those
of
achievement
education.
scores are diminishing. He's got
Right.
a plan. That's part of it
He
to
does
turn
have a
that
plan.
around.
So
Yeah.
and know
But
that
It's not a blank check.
and know that mechanically speaking, whatever you cut, he's got to bring back full circle into a public hearing, and then we can sit there, or all sit there and listen to people come up and advocate for no cuts. This is our education. This is and there'll be an auditorium full of people, which we had when we had the governors. So I guess there's a choice you can make here. I mean, you can do both. You can roll around in the mud on some of the line item detail, and that's fair. But then maybe that doesn't yield what you're looking for, and maybe you just say, look, this is the number. We can't really support or sustain anything higher than this. We want your percentage to be in this range. We want the amount to be this, so we want you to cut X. And I remember last year when Tom Mazzoli had asked them, well, how much can you cut without cutting bodies? That was a question. I thought was a good question to ask him. But maybe you do cut bodies. Maybe there aren't any bodies being cut. Maybe you're cutting new proposed positions. That I can't tell unless he's here and we're asking those questions. So
I agree with Joe. I mean, I don't think we can, I certainly don't have the expertise to look at each
Right.
item and be able to analyze it in the context
Right.
of the school board. I mean, that's what their job is over there.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
but on the other hand, you know, us picking a number that you ought to reduce the budget by is like us sitting here
Yeah.
throwing darts at a
Yeah.
board. You
Well,
know?
I think it's really what we feel,
What's
and I don't know how we do this, because we don't have the whole process is, in my mind, backwards, but we need public input now. What do you feel, you know, we have some preliminary numbers, what do you feel you're willing to increase your taxes by to sustain that
Priorities.
that priority? I mean, that education, those scores are not going in the right direction.
No.
And, you know, math and STEM is where everything is at nowadays. And that's the future of our country, our community, our state. I mean, you see it
Yeah.
every day as the
Yeah,
provost.
I mean, we've put pressure on him to get those scores up.
Right, but now
And
we
so-
gotta put some money behind
And
it.
so, on the one hand, how can you say, well, no, you can't have the money that
Right.
you need to do that? On the other hand, we have no measurement stick. We have no way of measuring whether the money that we're dropping over there has any effect or not, or whether he's using it wisely or not.
I want to follow up with what Mike said. He's in a difficult position, I recognize that. The relationship from the town side is completely different. Between myself and Mike and Brian, we work very closely together, and we take his advice. That's why we think we can scrub some additional reductions here. But him being in the position of making recommendations on the Board of Education, which is 2/3 of that budget, difficult anymore than it's difficult for you to say cut X.
You can't make those decisions
No.
if you're not in that
No.
building,
Right.
That's
No.
true.
because you have to see that every day.
This town is pro-education, and I happen to agree that test scores need to be addressed.
Yeah.
And it's difficult sometimes to take away the funding necessary to do that. But again, I can't make that decision either. Anybody might.
So, I mean, if you look, I have looked at this budget, and I'm looking at it more in an analytical way than I am a line item way, although I do have looking at the line items also. But you consider he's got a new teacher's contract,
Yeah.
which basically is a 3%,
Yeah.
how does it go,
Overall.
3%, 3%?
They play
Yeah,
one
And
through
then
one.
two
Total.
something?
Yeah, something like that.
And then, that's just a general contract number. Then you have steps that are in there. So some people are gonna get, if you have it maxed out on your step, you're gonna get a percentage increase and a step
Yep.
increase, which is a little bit higher.
I sat through
So-
all that pain.
So now if you look at his line item budget in there, it's held below 3%. So some people are not getting raises. It's below 3%.
Yeah, I thought he
In
was gonna
fact,
come in a lot higher than
It's a
this
251. His line item for salaries is 2.51 for teaching staff salaries, not administrators or anything.
You may have some attrition too.
His overall salaries
That's
is
possible.
2.7. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
got
I mean-
attrition, but he's also got
Yeah,
new
somebody
positions
retires,
too.
you come in
Which
with
are
a lower.
But they're going to
Yeah.
come in low. Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
gonna
come
come
in
in lower.
lower.
So,
By
I
like
mean,
50%.
everybody's gonna get a step because it's how the years work. But they'll get, like you said, somebody's gonna max
I'm
out,
actually
retire, and somebody new's coming
pretty
in at
happy
step
with his
one as opposed
number.
to being at 15.
So his 908,833. That's his 3.81% increase. 80% of that, or 728,000, is salaries.
Yeah.
So what's he got left to play with? $180,000 for oil, heat, books, computers, whatever else he puts in there. So let's say we're going to be really cruel and say, okay, that has to be flat. You took that all away from him, you still have a 3% increase in his budget, 3.05%.
And the only way
Because it's all
for him
driven.
to get that is put bodies out on the street.
It's all driven by salary.
The other thing is, Mike, I'm almost sure reading through it, last year he mentioned he probably needed to hire another psychologist to come in. I think he really seriously
Mental
needs
health.
one. and if-
Everything he said he needed in the past,
Yeah,
he's
he's put
putting
it
in
in
this
here.
budget.
Yeah.
And he's putting in math specialists, I believe, on all the schools.
They gotta have that.
And I don't think anybody would argue that. I'm not in the
You're
position.
just like, I'd like to see what's happening to teacher, the numbers of teachers,
Yeah.
right? and how that relates to enrollment.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't dig into the salary issue. I mean,
No, either can I for that matter.
Even that number, this number of teachers versus enrollment,
Yeah.
they got paraprofessionals doing mental health screening, they got mental
Yeah, I
math
mean, it's all-
paraprofessionals. It's
School
it's very, very
psychologists,
difficult to
yeah.
analyze that data unless you're
unless
in
you're
that
in it.
building and you're a professional managing
If
it.
you're on ground zero,
You
that
have to
it's-
trust,
that's true.
not, like you say, it's not a
Okay.
blank check, but you have to trust his professional judgment. That's what we're paying him for.
Do you have
So-
any, Mike? Do you have any insight as far as the health insurance? I mean, I think that includes a pretty significant
Yeah,
increase
that-
in health
that-
insurance, right? 14% or
Yes,
something is what they're.
yeah, well,
And that's a couple $100,000.
yeah, see, we were linked with them up until 2 years ago, a year and a half, year ago. It'll be 2
More than
years
that,
this
it's
year.
2 years.
2 years. And so their ups, every time the insurance carrier came in, it was like a 30% increase based on your
You
history.
guys did a couple RFPs, you bid.
We actually went out to bid
Who
two
did, the
two
town or the
times.
Board of Ed?
Everybody.
Both of us
Everybody.
in tandem. We have a consultant that handles both of us, and so I made the decision, along with consulting with Bud, that it was no longer a good relationship for the town. Our rates were going up way too high, so we asked them if they wanted to join us in the State Partnership 2.0, which is you're probably insured by the partnership plan. So the legislature allowed municipalities to be in on state, you're insured by state, to be insured by the state plan. So now we got in on that in year one. We actually went down.
We
a
went
bit.
down 0.6%.
Instead of going up 0.8. So that was like,
No, instead of going up 8%, we went
8%.
down.
I'm sorry,
just shy of
8%, not
1%.
so now, so we've been now with the partnership, and now this year, they're still off. They went out, I believe they went out to bid again,
Again
or
this
threatened to
year.
go out to bid, or
After
at
their
least got
initial-
quotes.
But
After
part of that
initial
number
quotes
is
came in
that,
at
is
20.
that insurance number.
It's
Yeah.
like
It is.
200,000 of it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Why
And-
don't, can we force them into the
Probably their
partnership?
union contract.
It's
if I
in
guess.
their
Is it?
union
You can't do it
contract.
for the next 3 years,
Yeah.
because he's,
No, it depends on the wording in his contract, because at one point, I remember we had discussions about you should include some kind of wording that says you can go to the partnership or something the equivalent
Equal
to
or
what
better,
you have.
exactly.
But let him explain it to you. They really don't want to open up a contract, because it opens up everything else once you open up a certain clause
well,
in the
they just
contract.
opened it.
They just settled it.
Didn't
Yeah, they
they,
just finished it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
But
just
How-
do it.
how many years did
historically,
they have?
they've always started out real high with
Three.
the insurance number.
Yeah.
Because they get an initial quote, and then I think they start to work it down. But
Yeah.
usually the number we see
Yeah.
is the higher number, right?
Well, they started.
Well, what you're seeing now, I think, is pretty much what he's going to go in at.
Yeah,
He's got.
I'm not sure what his percentage is in the budget. I know when their
I think it was
initial
up to a
numbers.
12 or
was up
13.
substantially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know their initial numbers were over 20, and his goal was to get it between 12 and 14. So if that's
I
what
thought
he's
14 was the
projecting,
number.
yeah. So if that's what he's projecting, then that's his best guess effort. I would say.
Contrast that with us now. We're in the partnership. They made us move out of Anthem into United Healthcare Oxford Health Plan.
I like that.
We've now been told by the state
You're going
that
back to
Anthem
Anthem?
has
Yeah.
won the bid,
Period.
and we're going back to Anthem.
No.
And it's not going to be an increase, they're telling us, but we still don't know
We have no
what
idea
it's
what
going
the
to
rates
be.
are going to be.
So the budget you see right now is flat. We've budgeted at flat. Let's say Anthem says, oh, no, it's going to be 3%. Well, then that's going to increase. But we've been led to believe by the state controller's office that it's going to be lower. So, and it's a guessing game. So we've
Even
talked to
our
our consultants about it. They
said
go,
that we won't have numbers until April or May. So by
Right.
then we'll be at public hearing and referendum, still unsure of exactly what our
But
budget, our
that's a-
healthcare costs would be.
it's a better plan, I think, in the long run and it suits us better than the
Well,
other.
the natural question, I mean, Mike, to extend on what you said, is if they budget at 14 and it comes back at 10, what happens to the 4%?
If
Yeah,
it
that's
goes
a
to
good
referendum
question.
with the 4%, it stays there.
It stays there.
If they come,
And
if they get a
they don't
bid back
spend it,
before,
Get it
then
back.
we get it back.
yeah. But if they get a number in before we go to public hearing and referendum, then that could still be adjusted.
But we don't
See
have
their
any
transfers.
ability. We don't have any ability to to modify that budget once
That
it's
is
passed.
correct.
We're
Yeah,
done.
abs-
And
once
we
you
don't see
pass
their
it, they go to
transfers
public
out of
hearing,
that
yeah.
line item into another line
Oh,
item.
that's
Right.
terrible.
Do we?
Right.
No.
Yeah, we
I
can't,
don't
we
think
can't
that's-
do
that's
anything
not
on
good.
on the object level with them at all. We're just, that one line item of their 23, 24 million,
Yeah.
that's our one line item in our budget.
Well, I
That's
think if
called-
it comes in at 18%, they're gonna ask for more money, right? But if it comes in at 10, we don't see the money back.
They're not gonna ask for more money.
No,
They'll make it work.
once they have
They'll
it
make it work,
passed,
okay.
yeah, they'll make it work. But
Okay.
you're
I
right
think
on
you can
this.
put them
on
on
the latter
notice,
half
though,
of
that
it.
we expect at some point in the end of the year that some of that 4% would come back, that delta.
They're dealing also with,
Yeah, that's a dream statement.
Or they're gonna
Yeah.
pay a hell of a price come next fiscal year.
special ed. They're dealing with that. They don't really know that. They can't even budget
That's a big
that.
one.
And that's
That's a
really
big unknown.
expensive,
Yeah.
really expensive.
Yeah,
Don't they also have tuitions to pay?
That's the special ed.
Tuition's
That's the
out,
special
yeah.
Well, they
ed.
pay CREC as well. They pay the
Correct.
magnet and then they pay special ed.
But they got that
separately.
going down a bit, so it looks like that we have fewer students going out of town to these, this year anyway. So,
It's unfortunate that demands on the schools are increasing in terms of psychological counseling and support, and I don't see it changing.
He's got a good vision. I mean, the superintendent has a good vision. You know, I think it just needs a little bit of time to
yep.
come
Well,
to
he
fruition.
needs to execute his plan, and we need to fund it.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And then if in 3 or 4 years, those scores are not changing, well then, the town needs to make a broader decision on
I think
how
so.
to correct that issue.
Yeah. So that's kind of the overview picture. I would, as a rule, whatever gets returned to fund balance from this budget, I would have no problem automatically rolling it into the next budget. So if
Maybe a
it's
little more,
250,
yeah.
if it's 350, God, if it was 400, I would just roll it, and then that would close the gap in terms of what we need to consider.
Now, Mike, you'll end up freezing like, I know so far, knock on wood, we're still got some weeks left, but I know it's been a light winter. I mean, some of that money then will get, returned back to the
money?
budget, the
Yeah.
salt, the
Boy,
labor.
that's an awful lot
All
of
of
kids.
that.
Oh,
If it's
yeah,
underspent,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All gonna-
Because
He does-
we were
he
actually
buys
discussing
salt
that
on
Thursday
that
night
week.
with Todd. We were actually discussing the fact that his
I'm
temporary
willing to do
salaries
that,
just
but
he hasn't needed them
think
this
you
year
ought to
because
have
it has been such a light winter.
Yeah,
So he's
push as
very
hard as he
under trend.
can.
His overtime is
4
under.
years is a lot of kids.
So yeah, I fully
It's a
expect
whole
to see that
Class,
returned. I don't. He's not one to say, "Oh, okay, well, I didn't spend $20,000 in part-time salary. I'll go buy, snowplow
No.
or something." He doesn't.
What
he's not
has
like
the
that.
Board of Education returned in past years in terms of?
40,000
Well, they've started
last
with
year.
The
For
highest
years,
I've ever
they
seen
did
them is
90,000,
I've seen them
I
over
thought.
100,000 once. Usually it's into 40.
It was 40 last year.
It's like chump change.
Yeah.
It was like $500 I saw
Versus
last year.
250,000,
Oh, what's that was like?
With a budget a
I was
third
on
the
table
size.
with him.
a third of the budget.
He gave back 75.
And we have no
But,
exposure to that.
Well,
Last year's actual.
again, just to put things in
It's
perspective,
all salaries.
every 2 weeks, we get a salary number and an accounts payable number from our Board of Ed every 2 weeks. So there's 26 times that happens in a year. And every 2 weeks, that number is 1 mil. So that totals up to around your 26 or
85% of our budget.
so I'm
Salary.
using, you gotta back that off because there's summertime stuff, but literally, a mill goes out the door in expenses.
every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks between salary and
We're no
accounts payable.
different. We're 83% of a $1.3
So
billion
you have
budget.
huge
26 weeks.
I've got guys with 130% fringe rate.
So,
Oh yeah, can't make this stuff.
so it is, it is and it has been, it's a 2-to-1, 3-to-1, relationship here.
How would we create, I know the state allows you now to create the accounts where the board could keep the money at the end for like capital projects and stuff.
And this board won't allow that to happen.
But I'm saying though,
Because
how,
they
I mean,
came
if
from-
we
How
decided
would that
to-
be different? They
how
would
would
just
we
keep,
do
I
It
mean,
would offset
every
capital.
town kind of does it a different way.
lose all control at that point.
And the Board of Finance here felt as though that didn't need to be done at all because anytime the Board of Ed needed money, they would appear and they would get it. Even if they skipped going to a CIP meeting and came to the Board of Finance directly and said, and I remember Maynard doing this, we need X amount of thousands of dollars for a security
$275,000
system.
for security.
Yeah,
That
and,
sounds
and
fine.
the board voted for it right here and now and gave them the money. There was a 1% fund initially, and it's become a 2% fund, is what you can do now. So you can take 2% of
Their return.
your return and put it in.
And you
A
set the
fund.
rules of it.
Now, when they say a fund, some people think, oh, they have a bank account.
Slush.
No, we're doing fund accounting. We will establish a fund and call it your fund. But the Board of Finance can set up all kinds of rules around that fund. They can say, that fund is only good for capital equipment. That fund is only good for textbooks. They can set up the restrictions of that fund, and they can also make the Board of Ed appear in front of them to make a request to take the money out of that fund,
Which is essentially what we do by.
which is what you do now
By
anyway.
pulling it back.
So when
We don't need.
we
to-
had a member of the
Crazy.
board
No,
of
you're creating
Ed,
this bureaucracy to do.
But it
what
just
we
may give the
normally do.
incentive, though,
Right.
to return more money at the end of the year if they knew it was sitting in a fund as opposed to just getting returned to the general fund and then getting rolled over.
That's one theory.
Yeah. Well, I think that's
Yeah.
what some towns have done.
So-
Yeah.
Why is it such a composite when you're talking, it might be both with the selectmen budget and the Board of Education budget. Why does it, we see it as a composite, insurance and salaries, when in fact if the insurance is 4% less, they just keep it there?
Well, they're not. You got salary and fringe. Basically, insurance is the fringe, but they're separate line items. Because
But they're
essentially
able
you're
to
bidding
move it?
both.
I-
You bid the salary through the 3-year contract, and you're bidding the insurance or the fringe annually in some cases.
Let's see, what I'm thinking about is, sometimes if it's in one category, we'd have to come to the Board of Finance when I was on the Board of Select, say, can we have this transfer from
But
this
we
account
can't
to
see into
the
their
other?
Board of Ed
process.
doesn't have to.
They're a
They
separate
transfer
entity.
We're
internally.
prohibited
They're-
by law from
Yeah,
looking
they're a
inside
separate
their
entity.
budget.
Once it's
Right.
approved.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
once it's approved, they transfer it internally.
The
if
only
they need
budget
to.
you see is this number. That's
That right?
if they go over that and say they have a boiler failure, a catastrophic event, and they need 500,000, then they come back to us, and it would be that number plus 500,000.
I mean, when they come back to us, we can say, well, what do you got in your budget to help out?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's
Sure.
only if that
But-
happens.
But that's only if they're back hat in hand.
Right.
If
Yeah.
they're not back hat in hand, we don't have.
The
any-
reality is we've all worked. The 3 boards have worked very well together.
we have, and we've
And,
now
you
we've
know.
supplied them with a lot of funding to repair
Meet
their
their goals.
plant,
Yeah.
their buildings, and
Security.
And they're
Funding for
giving us
security.
fair warning right now that in the future, they have parking lots and roofs
Yeah, they
in a
pushed
few
that out
years
to
that are going to need to be
2027 or
done.
something.
And you're looking at another bond when you start looking at all the asphalt on all those parking lots, roads, and then all the roofs. So that's helpful though to know that
But
in
they
the future.
projected that. And
Yes.
we can manage that now and
Yeah.
plan accordingly. You know.
So I would say that we really do have a pretty good degree of cooperation. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't be scrutinized. I think every budget should be scrutinized, but I think overall, as Joe's pointed out, there is a good level of cooperation. So. All right, so I thought it was important that you get an idea
very
of
helpful, Mike.
of this.
I appreciate this early on.
Yeah.
What else we got, Mike?
Last item is the CIP update. You want me to, Joe and Brian to talk
Well,
about it?
we've got a stack of requests from the various departments.
Right.
We've got another meeting Brian's trying to schedule for the 19th, I think.
It's like trying to herd cats.
Oh my God.
And there are only 3 cats. And the cat master over here.
That's what all these scratches are from. Yeah,
What
no,
are we at? Where do we leave off in the process on the 19th?
I think right now everybody. The only one I didn't hear back from was Bill Boutwell for the 19th at 7 p.m. So,
That looks like the date.
but
I'm gonna go
that
with it.
shouldn't be an issue for him. So that'll tentatively, I would say that's going to be it. I'll circle back tomorrow and
19th at 7 is
Yeah.
tentatively where we are? Okay. Good.
I'll circle back tomorrow. But we have the 10-year plan
Yeah.
handed out to everybody. They've given it to the Board of Selectmen. They've given it to Board of Ed. The Board of Ed has approved their 5-year plan. Board of Selectmen reviewed the 10-year plan. There's already been some changes based on the January meeting with CIP, just what there really wasn't a taste for. So the 10-year plan got reduced already. And then the 19th will be the meeting where they go through all the presentations and really start to hammer on the numbers and come up with what CIP has a taste to fund, what they may or may not want to put in their capital budget. They may approve it everything that night. They may push it out. They have another meeting March 12th, I believe, either March 12th or March 19th, one of the two. They have another meeting, and so it might go until then to approve the capital budget. But
Then it comes to the Board of Finance
For vote.
everything will
It's
come
a
here. It
recommendation
comes
out
into
of
the
CIP.
budget,
in
but
the
It's
it-
a
March
vote.
meeting.
Yeah,
The vote to fund it comes out of Board of Finance.
yeah.
All set.
All right?
Anything else?
Anything else?
Who's going to motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay,
I
it's
always try to. Whatever I-
7:47 and we adjourn. Thank you all.
You.
All right.